I remember the exact moment I realized my son-in-law had no idea who I really was. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet, ordinary, until I heard him laugh about the old man who owns this place. He didn't know I was standing right behind him. He didn't know that I was that old man, and I didn't say a word. Because sometimes the truth reveals more when it stays hidden. I never planned for things to unfold this way. If you had asked me 10 years ago where I saw myself, I would have said somewhere quiet, retired, maybe tending a small garden, watching my daughter build a life filled with love and stability. That was always the goal. Not wealth, not power, just peace. But life has a strange way of giving you everything, except the one thing you truly want. My name doesn't matter much. In the business world, it carries weight. Boardrooms fall silent when I walk in. Deals bend in my favor and people listen carefully when I speak. But at home, I was just dad, and eventually just him. I built my company from nothing. No investors, no shortcuts. Just years of sacrifice. Missed birthdays, long nights, and a quiet promise to myself that one day, my daughter would never have to struggle the way I did. Her name is Anna. She was the only good thing that came out of a very difficult chapter of my life. Her mother left when she was young, said I loved my work more than my family. Maybe she was right. But I made sure Anna never felt abandoned. I was there for every school event, every illness, every heartbreak. I wasn't perfect, but I tried. And when she grew older, she met him. Daniel. At first I liked him. It's strange to admit that now, but it's the truth. He was polite, ambitious, confident in a way that didn't feel arrogant, at least not in the beginning. He listened when I spoke. He asked thoughtful questions. He made Anna laugh in a way I hadn't seen in years. And most importantly, she loved him. That was enough for me. I didn't tell him about the company, not because I was hiding it out of fear or shame, but because I wanted something real. I wanted someone in my daughter's life who didn't measure worth in numbers or titles. Someone who respected me as a person, not as a position. So I stayed quiet. I told him I used to work in corporate management, that I had retired early, nothing more. He never pushed for details, which I took as a good sign. It meant he wasn't interested in what I had, just who I was. Or at least, that's what I believed. When they got married, I gave them a house. Not a mansion. Just a comfortable, beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood. Daniel was grateful, at least on the surface. He shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, "I'll take care of her." I believed him. For a while, everything seemed perfect. They would visit every weekend. Anna would sit beside me, resting her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was a child. Daniel would talk about his job, how he was climbing fast, how his boss saw potential in him. I listened carefully. The boss, he often mentioned, was me, but he didn't know that. He spoke about company decisions, leadership styles, frustrations with upper management. Sometimes he praised the CEO. Other times, he criticized him. Said he was too distant, too strategic, not human enough. I remember smiling quietly at that. If only he knew. Still, I admired his drive. I respected his ambition. I even made sure, from behind the scenes, that he was given opportunities to grow. Not because he was my son-in-law, but because I believed he had potential. Or maybe I just wanted to believe it. The first red flag was small. So small I almost ignored it. It was during dinner at their house. Anna had cooked. Something simple, but she always put love into everything she did. Daniel came home late that night. He barely acknowledged her effort. He sat down, checked his phone, and started talking about work. Not to her. Just talking. Anna smiled anyway. She always did. But I noticed the way her eyes dimmed for just a second before she looked down at her plate. That moment stayed with me. I told myself I was overthinking. Every marriage has moments like that. Stress, long days, distractions, it's normal, right? Then came the second moment. And this one was harder to ignore. We were at a family gathering. Friends, relatives, laughter filling the room. Someone asked Daniel about his job, and he lit up immediately. He loved talking about himself. It was subtle at first, but it was becoming clearer. "I'm basically running things now," he said with a chuckle. "The CEO trusts me with major decisions." I stayed quiet. He continued, "Honestly, if I were in his position, I'd do things very differently, more efficiently." Someone asked, "What about Anna? Does she help with anything?" He laughed. Actually laughed. She handles the home. That's her strength. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just discomfort. Because I knew my daughter. I knew her intelligence, her strength, her potential. She wasn't just someone who handles the home. She chose that role out of love, not limitation. And the way he said it didn't sound like appreciation. It sounded like dismissal. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words in my mind. His tone, his posture, the way Aina stayed quiet beside him. I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. Did I really know the man my daughter married? The answer didn't come immediately. It came slowly, in fragments. A comment here, a tone there, a glance that lingered too long on his phone. The way he spoke about success, as if it was something owed to him, not earned. And the way he started treating me, it was subtle. He stopped asking for my opinion, stopped engaging in meaningful conversations. Sometimes he would speak over me. Other times he would barely acknowledge I was in the room. To him, I had become irrelevant, just an old man living off past achievements. But the moment that changed, just an old man living off past achievements. But the moment that changed everything was the morning I visited his office, unannounced. I don't usually do that. I prefer to keep my personal and professional lives separate. But something in me needed to see things for myself. I walked in quietly. No introductions, no announcements. Just another visitor, and that's when I heard him, standing with his colleagues, laughing confidently, talking about the company, talking about the CEO, talking about me. Honestly, he said, shaking his head, the guy who owns this place? He's out of touch. People like me are the future, not someone hiding behind decisions from a distance. Everyone around him laughed. And then he added something that made my chest tighten. If I ever met him, I'd tell him exactly how things should be run. I stood there, just a few steps behind him, invisible, unknown. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a father. I felt like a stranger in my own world. I could have spoken up. I could have ended everything right there. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized something far more important than his words. I realized I had never truly seen who he was. And worse, neither had my daughter. So I made a decision, a quiet one, a dangerous one. I would say nothing. Not yet. Because sometimes the truth doesn't reveal itself in confrontation. It reveals itself in time. And I had a feeling what I was about to discover next would change everything. I didn't confront him that day. I walked out of that office the same way I had walked in, quietly, unnoticed, carrying something heavier than anger. It wasn't rage that filled me. It was clarity, the kind of clarity that arrives too late. That night I sat alone in my study, staring at a photograph of Aina from when she was a child. She couldn't have been more than 6. Missing tooth, messy hair, holding my hand like I was her entire world. Back then, protecting her was simple. Now, it felt like I had failed at the one thing that ever truly mattered. I kept asking myself the same question. How long has this been happening? Not just his arrogance, not just his tone, but the quiet erosion of respect. The slow, almost invisible way he had begun to shrink her world, while expanding his own. And the worst part? She never complained. Over the next few days, I did something I hadn't done in years. I paid attention, not as a father blinded by love, but as a man who had spent decades reading people, understanding motives and recognizing patterns. At the office, I watched Daniel more closely. Not directly, never in a way that would reveal who I was, but through reports, through feedback, through the way people responded when his name came up. The picture that formed wasn't the one I wanted to see. He was ambitious, yes. Intelligent without a doubt, but he wasn't respected. He was tolerated. There's a difference. People described him carefully. Driven, confident, assertive. But underneath those polished words, there was hesitation, a pause, as if they were choosing their language very, very carefully. One senior manager, someone I trusted for years, finally said it plainly when I asked. He doesn't listen, she told me. He talks over people, especially those he thinks don't matter. That sentence stayed with me, especially those he thinks don't matter. That weekend I visited Aina. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up. She opened the door with a smile, but I noticed it immediately. The way it didn't quite reach her eyes. Dad, you should have told me, she said softly. I would have prepared something. I didn't come for food, I replied. I came to see you. For a moment, she just looked at me, and then she stepped aside. The house was beautiful, the same one I had given them. But something about it felt quieter than before, not peaceful, just quiet. Daniel wasn't home. He's working late, she said almost automatically. I nodded, pretending that was normal. Maybe it was. But then I asked something I hadn't asked in a long time. Are you happy? The question landed heavier than I expected. She froze, just for a second. Then she smiled again. Of course I am, Dad. It was a perfect answer. Too perfect. We sat together in the living room, and for a while, we talked about simple things, memories, old stories, the kind of conversations that feel safe. But I wasn't there for safety. I was there for truth. Aina, I said quietly, you know you can tell me anything, right? Her fingers tightened slightly around the cup in her hands. I know. Then tell me this, I continued, keeping my voice steady. When was the last time Daniel asked you how your day was? She didn't answer immediately, and that silence told me everything. I don't want to complain, she said finally, her voice softer now. He's just busy. There's a lot of pressure at work. I leaned back, watching her carefully. Pressure doesn't change who you are, I said. It reveals it. She looked down, and that's when I saw it. Not tears, not yet, but something close. He's different, Dad, she admitted quietly. Not like before. There it was. The truth. Small, fragile, but real. I didn't interrupt. I didn't rush her. I just listened. At first, I thought it was just stress, she continued. Then I thought maybe I needed to be more understanding, more supportive. Her voice trembled slightly. So I tried. I really did. I closed my eyes for a moment. Because I knew exactly where this was going. But nothing changes, she whispered. That sentence broke something inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like everything else in her life. That night, I made another decision. Not emotional, not impulsive. Strategic on Monday morning. I walked into the office, but this time, I didn't stay in the shadows. I called for a leadership meeting. Full attendance. No exceptions. Daniel was there, of course. Confident, relaxed, completely. On Monday morning, I walked into the office, but this time, I didn't stay in the shadows. I called for a leadership meeting. Full attendance. No exceptions. Daniel was there, of course. Confident, relaxed, completely unaware. I watched him as he took his seat, casually greeting others, carrying himself like someone who believed he belonged at the top. And maybe, in his mind, he already was. The room settled. Conversations faded. All eyes turned toward the head of the table, toward me. For a moment, Daniel didn't react. Why would he? To him, I was just another executive, another face, another irrelevant figure in a system he thought he understood. Then I spoke. Calm, measured. Before we begin, I said, there's something I've neglected for far too long. The room grew still. I continued. I've spent years allowing this company to run without a visible leader. I believed results were enough. A slight shift in posture around the table. Curiosity. Confusion. And then, unease. Daniel leaned back slightly, watching me now with more attention. Still calm. Still unaware. I think it's time, I said, that I formally introduce myself. Silence. Complete silence. I stood. Slowly, deliberately, and looked directly at him. My name is not just another name on a report, I said. A pause. Long enough for the weight of the moment to settle. I am the founder of this company. Another pause. And the CEO? The room didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't exist. Except for one thing. Daniel. I watched the exact moment it hit him. Not all at once, but in stages. Confusion. Recognition. And then, something far deeper. His face lost its color. His posture changed. And for the first time since I had known him, he had nothing to say. I held his gaze. Not with anger. Not with revenge. But with something far more powerful. Truth. And then I added quietly, which means we have a lot to talk about. Because this wasn't the end. It was only the moment. Everything began to fall apart.